Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Martin with the Illinois Channel, and I'm joined once again with Jeff Berkowitz of Public Affairs TV in Chicago. And Jeff, we've had a major summit between President Trump and President Xi of China, and that happened obviously in China. Everyone knows that. We're going to be going into in detail, some of the major points that the president said came out of that meeting. But before we do, and we'll be spending the majority of the time on that, I just want to take a quick look because nothing is happening in microcosm. I mean, we have any number of things going on simultaneously. And everyone knows that the price of oil because of the Iran war has shot up. And this is the futures price for June. Today, as we are taping this on May 17th, back up to $105 a barrel. And that means gas prices are continuing to increase at the pump. And of course, that will have some political implications as we move closer to the November elections. So Trump is under pressure to get that price of gasoline to come down long before we get to the November elections. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a chart of the S&P 500, the broad-based index that kind of shows how investors are feeling about the economy so far this year. This is a chart from the beginning of January. The market is not down, but up 8.2% since January. But folks, I would tell you to look, you see where April began. And interesting, while the Iran war is heating up, while the price of oil has shot up to high levels and gasoline is choking every time people go to the pump, look at how the market yet has soared. The American market has soared since the beginning of April, and it is up dramatically. And so while people are paying at the pump, they're also seeing their retirement funds go up, their 401k go up. Now Jeff and I are going to get to China and look at what the president said, but I want to share first, Jeff, this is a release the president, or the White House, I should say, has put out this morning, May 17, talking about the summit. And they said that the meeting with the President Xi of China delivered a consequential diplomatic breakthroughs. China agreed to purchase 200 Boeing jets, with the order potentially rising to 750 aircraft, a massive win, says the White House, for American manufacturing and workers. The two leaders also reached an agreement that Iran must not control the Strait of Hormuz. That's why the price of oil is up, by the way, reflecting shared commitment to global security, and I would say to getting the price of oil down. And interesting, Treasury Secretary Bessent also said the two nations are now discussing a joint board of investment, which would be interesting, Jeff, but I know nothing about that. It would be interesting to have some of the details. But now we're going to be getting into discussing more of the details on that summit that could be historic. I think we won't really know how significant it is until we go further and see if this leads to further cooperation with China and the United States or conflict. And the big issue for President Xi is Taiwan and what happens there, and will we possibly have arms sales? With all of that, Jeff, welcome back. Good to see you again. Give me your initial opening as we take a look at this Trump-Xi
Well, before
summit.
we get to China, let's just
Go
go
ahead.
over the Terry Martin overview, which kind of follows Trump. One problem that Trump has when he discusses economics for the country, he tends to overplay the market as opposed to the reality. And by the reality, I mean, we often look in economics at real growth of the country. I think that's correlated more than the market in terms of
Well, what is
voting.
GDP growth so far this year, do we know?
Well, not good. We were going to be looking, they thought, at 3 or 4% in the first year. I don't think we reached that. And I think in the last quarter, I think it was like something like 0.5%. I have to go back and check. First quarter, 2%. We're not in the 3 to 5% range where they were hoping to be. And we've really
Where they
slowed
hope to be
down.
for the year, number one. Number
Right.
two, obviously, when
Right.
you have global events happen, that kind of interrupts the paper plan for growing the economy. So, we're dealing with Iran, we're dealing with the price of oil, and at the same time, that's a drag on growth. Now, at the same time, we have workers not having to pay tax on tips, and so the tax returns that are coming in are estimated to be about $1,200 to $1,500 higher than they were a year ago. So one of the reasons I think the American economy continues to be on firm footing is we've had a big inflow of tax return money going to people. And since the overwhelming majority of the American economy operates on consumer spending, we're seeing that we get a lot of money coming into consumers' hands. Now, that is helping to pay for that gas. So I would say right now we need to see, as quickly as possible, a resolution to opening the Strait of Hormuz. That'll bring quickly the price of oil down. Otherwise, we will see that price of oil, if it continues, to be a major drag on the economy. All right, I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, Terry, you've taken 8 minutes of the first 10 minutes, okay? Just pointing out. Yeah, I'll take my minute, okay, to your 8. If you look at the polls, which, people should look at from time to time, Trump is down on his approval rating for handling the economy. That was his strength when he came in, when he was elected. But now the polling shows him underwater in the high 30s, not in the high 50s where he once was. So they're not giving him the credit that you seem to be giving him for. And they're really concerned about gas prices more than you seem to be concerned. I'm just saying this is the polling. Trump keeps saying when the war is over, prices will come down quickly. I agree with him, but number one, it's a matter of how quickly, and two, it's a matter of when the war is going to be over. We've had a ceasefire for about a month now, I think, maybe longer, and I don't know what's happening. I haven't heard of what's going on to make him continually optimistic that we're getting close to Iran giving us what they want. He always says, often he has said numerous times, we've got an agreement, and then the next day we don't have an agreement. And it doesn't matter, even if it's true, as he says, that the forces, the people in control, whoever they are changing their mind. And that may be, but it's not producing results. America wants high growth. Look, they do want to be protected from the danger from Iran. Trump will be given credit from that, okay? But they want their gas prices lower and be able to go about their business. So this all may well end well in terms of the midterms coming up in November, but at the moment, there's a lot of uncertainty. So that's a good segue into what happened on the trip to China. Was it a success? Was it just okay? Or was it a failure? And I would say it's somewhere between mild success or just okay. And there are some problems that I see with the trip.
Well, we'll get into that. But here's what I would pretty much agree with you. I would say the main thing, one thing that was different, we should note in passing, not to spend a great deal of time on it, but it was interesting, and I don't recall this happening before, that President Trump brought along something like, I figure it was 15 or 20 different major business leaders, global, the head of Apple, the head of NVIDIA. And so Elon Musk went along. Elon Musk gets along very good with President Xi of China and has Tesla plants in China. So it was interesting. And I would say one of the major things I would say, if we just take the big picture here, was that when you have meetings like this, and we should also note that President Xi was invited to come visit the White House later in the year, when you have these meetings, it at least keeps us all talking and tries to cool down the conflict. When we look at what's happening in Congress and how we're Democrats can no longer even talk to the White House or no longer even be civil. That every time a Democrat speaks, they're calling the president a racist or a misogynist or something crazy. That's not what you want when you're dealing with a country the size of China, who could certainly be a military adversary. So I think when you have these summits, they help to kind of keep the lines of communication open, keep the temperature down. And Trump, as we will see in these clips, we have 4 clips we'll share, Trump is being cagey about some of the most hot button issues. And for President Xi, it is Taiwan. And also, will the United States send billions of dollars in military aid to Taiwan? So before we, or if you want, we'll get into the first bite. But
Well, before we go to the first bite, let me say something. Again, Terry, 4 minutes for you, 0 for me. I just want to, have some balance here. So you raised the issue, which was an important one, of what was accomplished on the trade issue, in terms of exports from the U.S. It wasn't said as explicitly during the thing, but before, Trump said his goal was to get access for American business to the big market in China. Access. Did he get that? Well, number one,
he
two big
might.
issues
Go
came
ahead,
up.
but I would say you're right. You're right. That's what
Can I
he
say
wanted to
something,
open
Terry?
it up.
Yeah. So you mentioned, let me just say, you said, I don't know whether you thought it was 10, 20. And there were a number. I'd heard the number of 30 people going
It doesn't
over.
matter to me. The
And,
point is he brought him along.
but it's important. It's important.
They weren't
No, I'm just
diplomats. They were
saying.
businessmen.
No, but Mr. Orberg from Boeing was really important because the one thing you were citing to that seemed, if not a memorandum of understanding, fairly specific, was 200 Boeing jets, maybe up to 750 eventually. Cook is important, as you mentioned, because Apple's so important and so heavily involved in China. And Jensen's so important because NVIDIA, as you know, well know, the chips are so important, the advanced chips and Musk. But also, to round it out a bit, Jamie Dimon, I think, was from Chase. He was there, the only woman, I think, on the trip. Jane Fraser from
I think these are
Citibank.
important, but we're
Okay,
we're
I'm
taking
just
the
saying-
time of the show to talk about
Okay.
names rather than getting to the issues that the president is pointing out. So
Well, let
unless
me
this is
say-
really important for us to know, let's not dwell on it.
Look, I think number one, and we'll get to that in the bite. So as a lead into the bite, is bite one might have been a threat. He was asked, was it a threat? He said no. But it's the number one issue which Trump agreed that goes back years when he was first discussing this with the Chinese. The number one issue is Taiwan. And that sounded like a threat to me coming from their foreign minister as to their statement when they said the United States must handle Taiwan properly to avoid clashes or conflict. So we'll see that in the bite. That's really important. Who had strength? Who raised it? How did Trump respond? Maybe we can go to the bite.
After your first meeting here, President Xi's spokesman put out a statement to the media, through the media, saying this: the Taiwan question is the most important issue in China-U.S. relations. If it is handled properly, the bilateral relationship will enjoy overall stability. Otherwise, the two countries will have clashes and even conflicts, putting the entire relationship in great jeopardy. You were still inside the meeting when that came out. That sounded almost like a threat. Was it communicated that way behind closed doors?
No, it wasn't, not at all. But it has always been their most important issue. And it's not a takeover. They just don't want to see this place, we'll call it a place because nobody knows how to define it, but they don't want to see it go independent. They don't want to do it. And I think they probably would do something pretty harsh, and then they would be met harshly, and bad things will happen. No, it's not that. We talked, by the way, last night, we talked the whole night about that issue. I think I know more about Taiwan right now than I know about almost any
You
country.
think it dominated the talk?
It's always been his most important thing.
So there you go. We have Jeff, the president, talking about Taiwan, and so far not really committing to Taiwan weapons sales, but keeping it as a negotiating point.
Yeah, the whole issue here with Taiwan is strategic ambiguity, which is the official policy of the United States, going back a long time, decades perhaps. And I think the official policy is the U.S. does not support or oppose independence of Taiwan from China. But unofficially, I think the U.S. supports independence. Or else, what's this about? Why are we giving him arms? Why do we have allies in the Indo-Pacific? Number perhaps 10, including Taiwan, even though we don't say that officially. What are we trying to accomplish in the Indo-Pacific, if not to keep Taiwan independent? Do you agree, Terry?
Well, yes. I mean, here's the thing. We have had relations with Taiwan going back to the Chinese Revolution, when Chiang Kai-shek and his followers lost the Civil War, Mao won, and those who were for freedom as compared to communism fled to Taiwan. And that has been a sore point in the side of China and U.S. relations since, 1949. And Nixon had a one China policy, which kind of left Taiwan in an ambiguous, as Trump says too, he calls it a place, because you don't want to call it a state, you don't want to call it a nation, because that would be throwing fire on or gas on the fire that would irritate President Xi and his policies. He wants Taiwan back. And so this is the balancing act that U.S. foreign policy has had with Taiwan over the last 50 years, since Nixon went to China and reestablished a working relationship. As some of us will remember, you and I do, were many years when China, with over 1 billion people, might have been on the black side of the moon for all we ever heard of China. I mean, there was no communication with it.
Right. It was known as Red China at that time, and we still were thinking of Thailand as China, until the United States only recognized China as China, the People's Republic of China as China, I think in 1979. And that was 30 years after Chiang Kai-shek was kicked out of the mainland and he went over to Taiwan and that's what. So that has been a long time coming, but I do think Trump at some point can get away with referring to Taiwan as a country. It may not be official, but I think it's kind of odd to say we can just call it a place, because it is a country.
Well, he wants to purposely use
country.
vague issues. Now, let's get to, again, some of the flashpoints, because here's the thing. The American military is preparing for a war with China. That doesn't mean we're going to have a war with China. It just means that we have to be prepared, because obviously China is a country that we could potentially go to war with, as compared to we're not preparing for war with Canada or England. China would be the most likely country that could endanger the United States from a strategic standpoint. So we're preparing for that. Let's listen to what the president had to say about these strategic tensions.
No, nothing's changed. I will say this. I'm not looking to have somebody go independent and, we're supposed to travel 9,500 miles to fight a war. I'm not looking for that. I want them to cool down. I want China to cool down.
But you're waiting on approving billions of dollars of weapons for Taiwan.
That's right.
Is that
I'm
moving forward?
Well, I haven't approved it yet. We're going to see what happens.
What are you looking for?
I may do it. I may not do it.
Yeah, what's your hinge point?
Well, I'm not going to say that, but I may do it. I may not do it. But we're not looking to have wars. And if you kept it the way it is, I think China's going to be okay with that. But we're not looking to have somebody say, let's go independent because the United States is backing us.
So President Xi probably liked that you haven't approved the weapons to Taiwan.
I would say like is maybe too strong a word, because he thinks I could do it with just the signing of my signature, unlike Biden, who couldn't sign his signature. No, I'm holding that in abeyance, and it depends on China. Depends. It's a very good negotiating chip for us, frankly.
So, Jeff, there you go, and that's the president speaking of that. One of the things when we talk about the flashpoints about Taiwan and arms sales, what's interesting, and the President Trump says that President Xi is he and Xi get along well, and he says, "My friend." Even if it's not true, I think it's probably a good way to talk about an opponent like Xi and to try to calm the water, so to speak. Here's the president noting that, you know, the whole situation with Iran that we talked about earlier could have been much worse, but for the way that President Xi has handled it from the standpoint of China.
You said that the President Xi said he would offer assistance on Iran, and specifically,
I also said we don't need assistance.
you didn't ask for it. You said he was offering it specifically to open the Strait of Hormuz. What do you think he will do?
I think he's been very nice about it. He gets 40% of his oil there. He didn't send anybody. He didn't send ships. He didn't send ships with big fat guns on them that we would have had to repel.
So there you go. President Trump said, you know, President Xi could have sent over some troops because of the oil they're getting from Iran, or sent over ships, I should say. He didn't do that. So sometimes the victories come in what hasn't happened as compared to what did happen.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. Look, what does Trump want out of this? He wants stability. He doesn't want anything, major problems. He wants it just to keep moving along, the relationship between China and the United States. But by raising almost, look, he said there's no change in one of these bites. There's no change, and there is no change. But he's done several things I think wrong, and
When you say he did it wrong, who?
Trump understands that we're engaged in arms sales to Taiwan, and unless he's going to do a change and say no arms sales, there's going to be one fairly soon. He's holding up 14 to 16 billion dollars in arms sales. These are sales. These are not gifts, I think. And there's larger ones after that, because Trump wants, in general, with our allies, whether it's NATO or these folks in the Indo-Pacific, spending 5% of their GDP on defense. Wants them to carry their share. So in order for Thailand, in order for Taipei or Taiwan to get up to that 5%, we got to do these arms sales. And now he's discussed it.
Yeah, but it's not, look, however Trump decides, I don't think there's any pressure for Taiwan to buy still. It's good that NATO's doing it. And the other thing I would insert here, if we overthrow, which I think is really the ultimate goal here, if we overthrow the current Iranian government, and we know the Iranian people do not want it, they feel oppressed. The Iranian government slaughtered, there's no firm figure, but estimated somewhere like 35,000 people protesting in Iran. So if the Iranian government is overthrown, the United States will also get military sales to the new government of Iran, should that happen. Possibly also Venezuela. We'll have to see about that. So I don't know that American military sales have to rely just on Taiwan.
No, it's not. I don't mean it's the export. I'm not saying for that. We're trying to deter. We're trying to deter China from moving and invading and taking over Taiwan. And so one deterrent to that is Taiwan and its allies building up their ability to defend themselves, along with, if we choose to get involved, helping them. So they need the arms to deter China. So that's why it's important. And at some point, he's going to have to show that. So I understand he's trying to they're both trying to do kissy face and be nice to each other. But you can only do that so long.
Well, here's another way. I mean, if you sell arms to Taiwan, that is a impediment to China taking over Taiwan, because they have, Taiwan then would have a lot of military sales. The other way to do it, which Trump is, I think, trying to do it, is a peaceful means. And I think this is part of his strategy. We, the United States, now are kind of in close cooperation with Venezuela. That only happened because we grabbed Maduro. And now, if we overthrow the Iranian government, where China gets something, Trump said 40%, I think it's higher than that from other reports. So if the United States has good relations in the future with Iran and Venezuela, these sales were, China was getting its oil, then they might go, well, you know, if we go at war to Taiwan, the United States has the ability to choke off our oil sales. So that's another thing to consider in this flashpoint on Taiwan.
Well, the president of Taiwan, who should count for something, came out after this trip and said, look, he was not looking, the president is not looking to escalate any friction between China and Taiwan. But he said, but on the other hand, he wants to maintain their independence. He wants to maintain their freedom. He didn't say it, but we know what happened to Hong Kong, which was supposedly China was going to leave them alone when they got involved with them, but they haven't. The freedom is gone. And the president of Taiwan made it very clear they don't want to unify. He didn't say it exactly. They don't want to unify then, now, or later. They are a different country. They are a free country. China is not. There's no getting around.
Look, as a practical,
no getting around
we got about 3 minutes left, so I want to use that time to more summarize this trip and what it might matter. On Taiwan, I would say its status is vague. I mean, as a practical matter, it is a country. It has its own relations with it has its own system separate from mainland China. But it might just be that the best policy for the United States vis-a-vis China is to leave this 50-year quasi-relationship with Taiwan as it is, and never to define it as a nation, but by the same token, allow Taiwan and those citizens just to live under their own government with their own freedom. And by the way, we all saw what happened to Hong Kong when China took it over. Those people in Hong Kong, which had been free, you know, since the revolution, they lost their freedom. So maybe just keeping things as they are is the best way for the two countries to go forward, the United States and China.
Sure, if that were the offer from Xi, if he were satisfied to do it, but he's not going to be, Terry. You have to remember, this is communist China. They look at it, they're getting to be an equal with the United States. They now think they may even have the upper hand, if not economically, not maybe militarily. They're never going to be satisfied with that, Terry. That's why it's important there be a deterrent.
Well, they may not be satisfied. Let me agree with that. Let's say that they're not satisfied, but by the same token, if they look at the implications of rocking the boat too much, they're not going to be satisfied with that either. So it's in China's interest to have great relations with the United States because their economy is an export economy, and the United States consumers, we're the biggest consumer market in the world. So China doesn't want to lose relations. And Xi, who's been much more belligerent than some of the other leaders prior to him, Xi is not a young man, and he's not going to be around. Hopefully there will be a good, stable leader in China after Xi, but we'll have to see.
Well, I think he was threatening to Taiwan. I think he
And
brought
this
up
is the
this
last word. You got 30 seconds.
He looks at the U.S. and China as not as partners. He looks at them as military and economic competitors. I think he looks at it that way. I think Trump should look at it that way. And I think the U.S. and China would be better off if Trump did that. You'd get a more likely a better outcome for the U.S.
All right, we got to have that be the last word, folks. Thanks for joining us. Give us a like and share the video if you want, and we'll see you next time.